The stage was set for what seemed like just another episode of a popular morning talk show. But little did anyone know that this particular day would go down in history. The studio buzzed with excitement as the crew prepared for one of the most anticipated episodes of the season. The lineup featured two polarizing figures: Karoline Leavitt, a young and fearless political commentator who had been making waves with her no-nonsense approach to discussing current events, and Robert De Niro, the legendary actor whose career spanned decades and who had recently become vocal about his political beliefs. Karoline had earned a reputation for being sharp, articulate, and unafraid to challenge even the most powerful individuals. Her rise to fame had been meteoric, fueled by her ability to break down complex issues into relatable points while holding people accountable for their actions. On the other hand, Robert De Niro was a household name, known not only for his iconic roles in films but also for his outspoken stance on social and political matters. While many admired his passion, others criticized him for overstepping boundaries and speaking on topics he didn't fully understand. As the clock ticked closer to airtime, the atmosphere backstage was electric. Karoline sat quietly in her dressing room, reviewing notes and mentally preparing herself for the discussion ahead. She knew that going head-to-head with someone like De Niro wasn't going to be easy. He was a man used to commanding respect, and his presence alone could intimidate even the most seasoned debaters. But Karoline wasn't intimidated. She saw this as an opportunity to engage in meaningful dialogue and, if necessary, call out hypocrisy when she saw it. On the opposite side of the hallway, De Niro was pacing back and forth in his own dressing room. Though he appeared calm on the surface, there was a hint of unease in his demeanor. This wasn't his first time appearing on live television to discuss politics, but something about today felt different. Perhaps it was the fact that he'd be sharing the stage with someone half his age, someone whose star was rapidly rising in the world of media. Or maybe it was the nagging feeling that this interview might not go as smoothly as he hoped. When the time came, both guests were escorted onto the set. The bright studio lights illuminated their faces as they took their seats across from the host. The audience erupted into applause, clearly excited to see these two personalities together. Cameras panned between Karoline and De Niro, capturing their expressions as they exchanged polite smiles. To the casual observer, everything seemed fine, but those who paid close attention could sense the tension simmering beneath the surface. The host welcomed the audience and briefly introduced the guests before diving into lighter topics to ease them into the conversation. Both Karoline and De Niro answered questions about their careers, shared anecdotes, and even exchanged a few laughs. It almost felt like the storm everyone had anticipated might never come. But then, the host posed a question that changed everything. "Both of you are very influential figures in your respective fields," the host began, leaning forward slightly. "But lately we've seen celebrities taking more active roles in politics. Some people applaud this, while others feel that entertainers should stick to what they do best. What are your thoughts?" De Niro jumped at the chance to respond. With a tone that was equal parts passionate and defensive, he launched into a monologue about why it was important for public figures to use their platforms to speak up about critical issues. He argued that staying silent in the face of injustice was unacceptable, and that those with influence had a responsibility to make a difference. His words were met with nods of approval from some members of the audience, but Karoline's expression remained neutral. Her eyes locked on him as if analyzing every word. As De Niro wrapped up his point, the host turned to Karoline, inviting her to share her perspective. Without missing a beat, she leaned forward, her voice steady and confident. "I agree that using your platform for good is important," she began, choosing her words carefully. "But I think we also need to hold ourselves accountable. It's not enough to simply speak out. You have to back up your words with action. And sometimes, when we look closely at the track record of certain individuals, we find inconsistencies." Her gaze shifted toward De Niro as she continued. "For example, Mr. De Niro, you've been very vocal about certain policies, yet there are instances where your previous statements or actions seem to contradict your current position. How do you reconcile that?" The room fell silent. Everyone could feel the shift in energy. De Niro blinked, momentarily caught off guard. He hadn't expected such a direct challenge, especially not so early in the conversation. For a brief moment he hesitated, searching for the right response. Then with a deep breath he attempted to deflect, brushing off her comment as irrelevant. But Karoline wasn't about to let him off the hook that easily. She pressed on, presenting specific examples and citing credible sources to support her claims. Her delivery was calm yet relentless, each sentence landing with precision. As she spoke, the audience grew increasingly engaged, hanging on her every word. Even the crew behind the cameras found themselves captivated by the unfolding drama. By the time Karoline finished her rebuttal, the mood in the studio had shifted dramatically. Applause broke out, echoing through the space as people acknowledged the strength and clarity of her argument. De Niro, however, looked anything but pleased. His jaw tightened and his eyes narrowed as he stared at her, clearly struggling to process what had just happened. What started as a routine morning show segment had transformed into something far more intense, and this was only the beginning. As the studio lights continued to shine brightly overhead, the tension in the room was palpable. Karoline Leavitt's calm yet piercing delivery had left Robert De Niro visibly rattled, and for the first time in his storied career, he seemed unsure of how to respond. The host, sensing the escalating energy, leaned back slightly in their chair, allowing the moment to breathe while trying to maintain some semblance of control over the conversation. De Niro, however, wasn't ready to concede. Clenching his fists ever so slightly, he leaned forward, his voice rising as he attempted to regain the upper hand. "Listen," he began, his tone sharp and tinged with frustration. "You're talking about things you don't fully understand. I've been doing this for years, decades, and I know what I'm saying. You can't just come here and accuse me of hypocrisy." Karoline didn't flinch. Instead, she met his gaze head-on, her expression unwavering. "Mr. De Niro," she replied smoothly, "I'm not accusing you of anything without evidence. Everything I've said is based on facts. Things you've publicly stated or actions you've taken. If you feel misrepresented, then clarify. But don't dismiss accountability as misunderstanding." The audience, which had been relatively quiet during the initial exchange, began to stir. Murmurs rippled through the crowd as people exchanged, glances clearly captivated by the unfolding drama. Some nodded in agreement with Karoline, impressed by her composure and ability to stay focused under pressure. Others whispered among themselves, debating whether De Niro's anger was justified, or if he was simply lashing out because he couldn't counter her points effectively. De Niro, growing increasingly agitated, raised his voice further. "This isn't fair," he exclaimed, pointing a finger toward Karoline. "You're twisting my words, taking things out of context. That's not journalism. That's an attack." At this point, the host interjected, attempting to steer the conversation back on track. "Let's try to keep this respectful," they said gently, though it was clear they were struggling to maintain order. "Both of you have valid perspectives, and we want to hear them. But the damage, or perhaps the magic, had already been done." Karoline seized the opportunity to address De Niro's accusation directly. "Twisting your words? No, Mr. De Niro, I'm using your own statements against you. Accountability doesn't twist, it reflects. If you're uncomfortable, maybe it's because the truth isn't always easy to face." Her response drew spontaneous applause from parts of the audience. It was impossible to ignore the power dynamics at play. A young woman barely into her 30s, standing toe-to-toe with one of Hollywood's most iconic figures and refusing to back down. Her confidence wasn't arrogance, it was conviction, and it resonated deeply with viewers both in the studio and watching at home. De Niro, now visibly flushed, shifted in his seat. He glanced briefly at the host, then back at Karoline, searching for a way to reclaim the narrative. "You're disrespecting me," he shot back, his voice laced with indignation. "I've earned my place in this world, and I won't sit here and let someone half my age tear me apart on national television." It was a bold statement, but one that only fueled Karoline's resolve. She tilted her head slightly, her demeanor remaining calm despite the mounting intensity of the situation. "Respect isn't given, it's earned," she countered. "And if you want respect, then you need to be willing to engage in honest conversations, even when they're uncomfortable. This isn't personal, Mr. De Niro. It's about holding ourselves accountable regardless of who we are. The audience erupted again, this time louder than before. Cheers and claps filled the studio, creating an almost electric atmosphere. For many, this wasn't just a debate, it was a moment of empowerment. Here was a young woman unafraid to challenge authority, speaking truth to power in a way that felt both refreshing and necessary. Behind the scenes, the production team scrambled to keep up. Producers whispered urgently into their headsets, reminding the camera operators to stay focused and capture every second of the heated exchange. Social media teams monitored live reactions online, where clips of the confrontation were already beginning to circulate. Hashtags like "Las Karoline V's de Niro" and "Das Truth to Power" started trending within minutes, drawing attention from millions around the globe. Meanwhile, De Niro appeared to be reaching his breaking point. His usual charm and charisma were nowhere to be found, replaced by raw emotion and frustration. "This is ridiculous," he muttered, shaking his head. "I don't need this." And with that, he abruptly stood up, startling everyone in the room. For a brief moment, there was silence. Even the host froze, unsure of how to react. Cameras panned awkwardly between Karoline, who remained seated with a composed expression, and De Niro, who was now towering over the table, his fists clenched. The audience, too, seemed torn between shock and awe. "Sit down, please," the host urged, their voice tinged with desperation. "Let's continue the discussion." But De Niro wasn't listening. He took a step back, his eyes locked on Karoline as if daring her to say something else. When she didn't, he turned sharply and walked off the set, leaving everyone, including the live audience, stunned. The host, clearly flustered, tried to fill the sudden void. "Well, we'll take a quick break and return shortly," they stammered, signaling to the crew to cut to commercial. As the cameras turned off and the studio lights dimmed slightly, the reality of what had just happened began to sink in. Backstage, chaos ensued. Producers rushed to assess the situation, while members of De Niro's team scrambled to locate him. Karoline, still seated on the set, exhaled deeply, her shoulders relaxing for the first time since the confrontation began. She hadn't planned for things to escalate this far, but she also knew she couldn't compromise her principles. As the commercial break ended and the show returned to air, the host addressed the audience directly. "Clearly, emotions ran high today," they said, choosing their words carefully. "We appreciate both our guests joining us for this important conversation." They then turned to Karoline, asking her to share her final thoughts. With grace and poise, Karoline spoke directly to the camera. "Today wasn't about attacking anyone," she said firmly. "It was about having an honest dialogue. We all, celebrities, politicians, everyday citizens, have a responsibility to hold ourselves accountable. If we can't do that, then we're failing each other." Her closing remarks resonated deeply, earning another round of applause from the audience. While De Niro's abrupt exit had overshadowed much of the planned discussion, one thing was certain: this episode would be talked about for weeks, months, even years to come. What had started as a routine morning talk show had transformed into a cultural moment, a testament to the power of truth, courage, and the unyielding pursuit of accountability. The moment Robert De Niro stormed off the set, the studio was thrown into a whirlwind of activity. Cameras cut to commercial breaks, but the buzz backstage and online was anything but quiet. Producers scrambled to figure out how to handle the unexpected turn of events, while social media erupted with reactions from viewers who had just witnessed one of the most dramatic live TV moments in recent memory. For Karoline Leavitt, sitting calmly on the set as the chaos unfolded around her, it was both surreal and validating. As soon as the show returned from the commercial break, the host did their best to salvage the situation. They turned to Karoline, offering her the chance to address what had happened. With a composed demeanor that mirrored her earlier performance, she leaned forward slightly, looking directly into the camera. "I didn't come here today to create conflict or stir up controversy," she began, her voice steady and measured. "I came here to have an honest conversation about accountability, something I believe is important for all of us, no matter who we are." Her words resonated deeply, with the audience, many of whom nodded in agreement. She continued, explaining that while she respected Robert De Niro's contributions to film and culture, respect wasn't a free pass to avoid scrutiny. "We're living in a time where people want transparency," she said. "They want leaders, whether in politics, entertainment, or any other field, to be held accountable for their actions. That's not disrespect, that's responsibility." The audience erupted into applause once again, their cheers echoing through the studio. It was clear that Karoline had struck a chord. Her ability to articulate complex ideas in a relatable way had won over not only those in the room, but also millions watching at home. As the segment wrapped up, the host thanked her for her participation, though it was evident that the real story of the day wasn't the planned discussion. It was the explosive confrontation that had taken place. Backstage, the atmosphere was tense. Members of De Niro's team huddled together, whispering urgently as they tried to locate him. Meanwhile, Karoline was surrounded by producers and crew members congratulating her on her poise and professionalism. Despite the high-pressure situation, she remained gracious, thanking everyone for their support while acknowledging the gravity of what had just occurred. Within minutes, clips of the heated exchange began circulating online. Social media platforms lit up with hashtags like Winer's Karoline Leavitt and De Niro Meltdown, as users dissected every second of the encounter. Supporters of Karoline praised her courage and intellect, calling her a role model for young women everywhere. Critics of De Niro argued that his reaction proved he couldn't handle criticism, while his defenders accused Karoline of being overly aggressive and disrespectful toward a Hollywood legend. Late-night talk show hosts quickly jumped on the bandwagon, replaying the viral moment repeatedly during their monologues. One host joked, "Looks like Robert De Niro finally met someone who doesn't get intimidated by his tough guy persona." Another quipped, "Karoline Leavitt didn't just destroy him, she demolished him." The jokes may have been lighthearted, but they underscored the cultural impact of the incident. By morning, it was impossible to scroll through any newsfeed without seeing some mention of the showdown. For Karoline, the aftermath brought both challenges and opportunities. Within hours of the broadcast, her name trended worldwide on Twitter, and her social media following skyrocketed. Messages poured in from fans, colleagues, and even strangers who wanted to express their admiration for her bravery. Journalists reached out, eager to interview her about the experience, and invitations to appear on other major networks flooded her inbox. Overnight, she had become a household name, a symbol of strength and authenticity in a world often dominated by carefully curated personas. But fame has its drawbacks, and Karoline quickly learned that not everyone was celebrating her victory. Some critics accused her of grandstanding, claiming she had deliberately provoked De Niro to boost her profile. Others questioned whether challenging a beloved actor on live television was appropriate, suggesting she should have shown more deference to his status. These criticisms stung, but Karoline refused to let them shake her confidence. In interviews that followed, she addressed the backlash head-on, emphasizing that her intentions were never malicious. "This isn't about me versus Robert De Niro," she explained during one appearance. "It's about having conversations that push us to think critically and hold ourselves accountable. If my questions made him uncomfortable, then maybe that discomfort was necessary." Growth rarely happens in comfort zones. While Karoline embraced her newfound spotlight, Robert De Niro retreated from public view. Reports surfaced that he was deeply embarrassed by the incident, particularly after memes mocking his meltdown went viral. Images of him shouting or storming off the set were plastered across the internet, accompanied by captions like, "When you can't handle the truth" and "De Niro versus logic." Even late-night comedians added fuel to the fire, creating skits that exaggerated his reaction for comedic effect. Days later, De Niro issued a brief statement through his representatives, attempting to explain his side of the story. "Mr. D. Niro felt ambushed and disrespected during the interview," the statement read. "He believes strongly in open dialogue but expects mutual respect when engaging in such discussions." While the statement aimed to soften the blow, it did little to quell the ongoing debate. Many interpreted it as an admission of defeat, further cementing the perception that Karoline had emerged victorious from the encounter. Despite the fallout, De Niro's legacy as an actor remained intact. Fans continued to celebrate his iconic roles, and his work in cinema was unaffected by the controversy. However, his credibility as a political commentator took a hit, especially among younger audiences who viewed him as out of touch. For some, the incident served as a reminder that celebrities aren't immune to accountability, no matter how revered they may be. Meanwhile, Karoline seized the momentum, using her platform to amplify her message. She appeared on multiple news programs discussing everything from the importance of fact-based arguments to the need for constructive dialogue in polarized times. Her charisma and intelligence shone through in every interview, earning her new fans and solidifying her reputation as a rising star in the world of media. Behind the scenes, Karoline reflected on the whirlwind of events that had unfolded. She knew the confrontation with De Niro would define her career in ways she hadn't anticipated, but she also understood the weight of her newfound visibility. "This isn't just about me," she told a close friend during a rare quiet moment. "It's about showing people that it's okay to ask hard questions, to challenge the status quo, and to stand firm in your beliefs, even when it feels like the whole world is watching." As the days turned into weeks, the dust slowly began to settle. The initial frenzy surrounding the incident gave way to broader discussions about the role of accountability in public discourse. Educators used the clip as a teaching tool, highlighting the importance of critical thinking and respectful disagreement. Political analysts weighed in, debating whether celebrity activism could ever truly bridge divides or if it risked alienating audiences instead. For better or worse, the clash between Karoline Leavitt and Robert De Niro had left an indelible mark on popular culture. It wasn't just a viral moment. It was a catalyst for deeper conversations about truth, integrity, and the power of holding ourselves accountable. And as the world moved on to the next big story, one thing was certain. Neither Karoline nor De Niro would forget the day their paths crossed in such spectacular fashion. The weeks following the explosive confrontation between Karoline Leavitt and Robert De Niro were nothing short of transformative for both individuals and the broader cultural landscape. What had started as a heated exchange on live television quickly evolved into a defining moment that reshaped careers, sparked debates, and inspired countless discussions about accountability, generational divides, and the role of public figures in shaping societal values. For Karoline, life after the incident was a whirlwind of opportunities and challenges. Her name became synonymous with courage and conviction, and she found herself thrust into the spotlight like never before. Invitations poured in from major networks, talk shows, and prestigious events eager to feature her as a guest or speaker. She appeared on late-night programs, morning news segments, and even international broadcasts, where hosts praised her poise and intellect during the now infamous showdown. Each appearance gave her a platform to expand on her views, emphasizing the importance of holding everyone accountable, regardless of their status or achievements. But it wasn't just media appearances that defined this period for Karoline. The overwhelming response to her performance led her to consider how she could use her newfound influence to create lasting change. Inspired by the outpouring of support and aware of the responsibility that came with it, she decided to launch her own podcast titled Unfiltered Truths. The show aimed to tackle tough topics head-on, featuring interviews with thought leaders, activists, and everyday people who had compelling stories to share. In its debut episode, Karoline reflected on the De Niro incident, acknowledging the risks she took but affirming her belief in speaking truth to power. Her growing popularity also caught the attention of publishers, leading to a book deal for what would become a best-selling memoir titled Speak Truth to Power: Finding Your Voice in a Noisy World. The book chronicled her journey, from her early days navigating the often hostile world of political commentary to the fateful day she challenged one of Hollywood's most iconic figures. It offered readers insights into her mindset during the confrontation, practical advice on standing up for oneself, and reflections on the importance of staying grounded amidst chaos. Fans devoured the book, praising Karoline not only for her sharp mind but also for her authenticity and vulnerability. While Karoline thrived in the aftermath of the incident, Robert De Niro faced a different kind of reckoning. Though he remained a revered figure in the entertainment industry, the viral clips of his meltdown lingered in the public consciousness, serving as a reminder of his uncharacteristic loss of composure. For someone whose career was built on commanding respect through powerful performances, the irony of being undone by his own emotions wasn't lost on observers. Critics questioned whether his outspokenness on political matters had overshadowed his artistic legacy, while supporters argued that he was simply human and entitled to moments of frustration. De Niro initially retreated from the public eye, focusing instead on personal projects and spending time with family. However, rumors swirled about his emotional state in the wake of the controversy. Friends close to him revealed that he felt humiliated, not necessarily because of Karoline's arguments, but because of how the situation spiraled out of control. He reportedly struggled with the realization that his reaction had been dissected and mocked across social media platforms, reducing decades of accomplishments to a single viral moment. Eventually, De Niro resurfaced, though his approach to public life shifted noticeably. He began scaling back his involvement in political activism, choosing instead to let his work speak for itself. When asked about the incident in rare interviews, he adopted a diplomatic tone, acknowledging that disagreements are inevitable but expressing hope that future conversations could remain respectful. "I'm passionate about the causes I care about," he told one interviewer, "but I've learned that passion can sometimes cloud judgment." Despite his efforts to move past the incident, remnants of the fallout continued to follow him. Memes mocking his meltdown remained a staple of internet humor, popping up whenever discussions about celebrity activism resurfaced. Late-night comedians occasionally revisited the topic, though their jokes grew less frequent as time went on. Still, the experience seemed to leave an indelible mark on De Niro, forcing him to confront the complexities of maintaining relevance in an era where public figures are held to increasingly high standards. As the dust settled, the broader impact of the confrontation became evident. The clash between Karoline and De Niro served as a microcosm of larger societal tensions, the clash between generations, ideologies, and approaches to activism. Younger audiences, in particular, rallied around Karoline, viewing her as a symbol of empowerment and resistance against outdated norms. They admired her willingness to challenge authority without fear of backlash, seeing it as a blueprint for navigating a world rife with inequality and injustice. Conversely, older generations grappled with questions about the evolving dynamics of respect and accountability. Some defended De Niro, arguing that his contributions to film and culture warranted deference, while others acknowledged that no one, not even legends, is above scrutiny. These debates played out across dinner tables, classrooms, and online forums, underscoring the incident's role in fostering dialogue about the responsibilities of public figures. Educators and commentators seized on the moment as a teaching opportunity, using it to illustrate key principles of effective communication and conflict resolution. Clips of the interview were shown in classrooms to spark discussions about tone, evidence-based arguments, and the importance of remaining composed under pressure. Political analysts weighed in, examining the intersection of celebrity and politics, while psychologists explored the psychological factors at play when individuals react defensively to criticism. Perhaps the most profound effect of the incident was its ability to inspire others to speak up. Countless viewers reached out to Karoline, sharing stories of how her bravery encouraged them to confront injustices in their own lives. Women, in particular, expressed gratitude for seeing a young female voice command such authority on a national stage. Letters poured in from aspiring journalists, students, and professionals, all thanking her for proving that intelligence, preparation, and determination could triumph over intimidation. Looking back, it was clear that the confrontation between Karoline Leavitt and Robert De Niro transcended the realm of entertainment. It became a cultural touchstone, a moment that challenged perceptions, ignited conversations, and ultimately reinforced the idea that accountability is a cornerstone of progress. For Karoline, it marked the beginning of a new chapter filled with purpose and possibility. For De Niro, it served as a humbling reminder of the complexities of wielding influence in the modern age. And for everyone else? It was a lesson in the enduring power of truth, a reminder that even in the face of adversity, standing firm in your beliefs can lead to meaningful change. Months turned into years, and the confrontation between Karoline Leavitt and Robert De Niro continued to resonate far beyond the initial buzz. What had once been a fleeting moment of live television drama evolved into something much greater, a cultural milestone that left an indelible mark on society. It wasn't just about two individuals anymore. It was about the values they represented, the conversations they sparked, and the ripple effects that shaped their respective trajectories. For Karoline, the aftermath of the incident became a launching pad for a remarkable career. Her rise from a relatively unknown commentator to a household name was meteoric, but she never lost sight of her mission: to empower others through truth, accountability, and meaningful dialogue. The success of her podcast, Unfiltered Truths, exceeded all expectations. Each episode drew thousands of listeners eager to hear her insights on pressing issues ranging from climate change to social justice. Guests included activists, scientists, politicians, and everyday citizens whose stories highlighted the importance of speaking up, even when it felt daunting. Her best-selling book, Speak Truth to Power, cemented her status as a thought leader and inspired countless readers to embrace vulnerability and courage in their own lives. Schools began incorporating excerpts from the book into curricula, using them to teach students about resilience and integrity. Teachers praised its accessibility and relevance, noting how it encouraged young people to think critically about the world around them. Karoline's influence extended beyond traditional media. She became a sought-after speaker at conferences, universities, and community events, where she shared her philosophy of fearless communication with audiences worldwide. But perhaps her most enduring legacy came from the way she used her platform to uplift others. Recognizing the power of storytelling, she founded an organization called Voices Unbound, dedicated to amplifying underrepresented voices in media. Through workshops, mentorship programs, and grants, Voices Unbound helped aspiring journalists, writers, and creators find their footing in industries often dominated by privilege and gatekeeping. For many beneficiaries of the program, Karoline's support meant more than just professional growth. It was a lifeline, a chance to be heard in a world that so often ignored marginalized perspectives. Karoline's journey wasn't without challenges, however. As her visibility increased, so did the scrutiny. Critics accused her of capitalizing on controversy, while trolls attempted to discredit her work online. Yet she remained steadfast, refusing to let negativity derail her mission. "Criticism is part of the process," she said during one interview. "If you're doing something impactful, someone will always try to tear it down. But staying true to your purpose is what matters." On the other side of the spectrum, Robert De Niro's post-incident journey took a quieter, more introspective turn. Though he continued to act in films, his roles became fewer and more selective. Industry insiders speculated that the confrontation had prompted him to reevaluate his priorities, leading him to focus less on political activism and more on his craft. In interviews, he spoke candidly about the lessons he'd learned from the experience, acknowledging that while passion is essential, it must be tempered with humility. "I've spent my life fighting for causes I believe in," De Niro reflected, during a rare public appearance. "But sometimes we need to listen as much as we speak. That day taught me that accountability isn't just for others. It's for all of us." His reflections resonated with fans who admired his willingness to confront his own shortcomings. Over time, the viral memes and jokes about his meltdown faded, replaced by renewed appreciation for his contributions to cinema. Younger audiences, unfamiliar with the controversy, discovered his iconic performances and celebrated his artistry. While the incident remained a footnote in his storied career, it served as a reminder that even legends are human, and that growth often comes from discomfort. The broader cultural impact of the confrontation continued to unfold over the years. It became a case study in classrooms, newsrooms, and boardrooms alike, illustrating the complexities of navigating public discourse in an age of heightened polarization. Scholars analyze the clash as an example of generational shifts in attitudes toward authority and accountability. Social scientists explored how moments like these reflect changing societal norms, particularly regarding the intersection of celebrity, politics, and media. Perhaps most significantly, the incident inspired a new wave of activism among ordinary citizens. People from all walks of life were emboldened to challenge injustices in their communities, drawing inspiration from Karoline's unwavering determination. Countless grassroots movements cited her as a role model, crediting her with igniting a spirit of courage and conviction in those who might otherwise have stayed silent. Years later, when asked about the incident in interviews, Karoline framed it not as a personal victory but as a collective awakening. "It wasn't about me versus Robert De Niro," she explained. "It was about having honest conversations, even when they're uncomfortable. We need to hold ourselves accountable, no matter who we are or where we come from. That's how we move forward." De Niro, too, expressed gratitude for the perspective the incident provided. "Sometimes life teaches you lessons in ways you don't expect," he said. "I'm grateful for the opportunity to grow, to learn, and to continue doing what I love." As time passed, the memory of the confrontation transformed from a flashpoint of conflict into a symbol of progress. It reminded people that accountability isn't an attack, it's an invitation to do better. And while the specifics of that fateful morning talk show segment eventually receded into history, its impact endured, shaping the way future generations approach truth, responsibility, and the pursuit of meaningful change. In the end, the story of Karoline Leavitt and Robert De Niro wasn't just theirs. It belonged to everyone who dared to ask hard questions, challenge the status quo, and stand firm in their beliefs. It proved that even the most unexpected moments could leave a lasting legacy, inspiring countless others to find their voice and use it wisely.